consequences. On October 7th, I woke up into the hall of shouts in Arabic, Allahu Akbar, sounds of gunshots and explosions. I ran to the safe room with my mother, my little brother who just turned 9, and a friend of his who came the night before for a sleepover. We locked ourselves in there when we started receiving messages about terrorists invading into our kibbutz. And that's when we started texting each other. We have a WhatsApp group chat of 100 teenagers of the kibbutz. They're in the ages of between 13 to 17. And usually we use this group chat to discuss about stupid things, like when is the food coming or where is the bus coming out, and I'm late, please ask the driver to wait. But that day was different. And on October 7th, the messages we received in that group chat were nothing but kids begging for help, begging for their lives. And the terrorists disconnected the electricity. So I remember myself sitting in the dark with my mother, my brother, and his friend, reading these messages, horrific messages saying, they shot my mother, they shot my father, my brother's body is with me, and they set the house on fire, someone help us. Imagine tens of kids saying these things. And we're sitting in the exact same position, knowing if someone comes in, that's exactly what would happen to us. And we hear someone trying to break in, knocking at the door aggressively. We did not open. Luckily for us, they left, but that happened about 5 times when they came back and tried to break in. At 9 a.m., my uncle Nir Shani texted us and said his house was set on fire. They broke in and he struggled against them, holding the handle. They did not come in, so they set the house on fire. And he said the room is starting to fill with smoke and he doesn't know how long he has left. Around 12:15 p.m., I kept reading the messages in this group chat, all while hearing the gunshots everywhere. It was constant, and shouts in Arabic everywhere, all the time. I see a message from Amit, my cousin. At first, he asked us to inform the IDF and asked them to come to his neighborhood because he can hear the terrorists outside. A few minutes later, it was no longer his neighborhood, but his house. And he said they're inside, they're shooting at the door. Someone sent the IDF here. The IDF is the Israeli Defense Forces. We lost connection with Amit, his mother, and 2 little sisters at that time. At 2 p.m., we were told that both of my grandparents were shot in their house. We called the hospital. The medics who answered us simply said on the phone, "We have nothing to do with it. The area is not clean. Stay strong." And they hang up the phone. Me, my mother, my brother, and his friend were rescued at 5:30 p.m. when a special unit called All Cats knocked at the front door. They said, "Open up, it's the IDF." They said it in Hebrew, but we already heard that day that some of the terrorists knew Hebrew. So I refused to open the door. I told my mom they already tried to break in about 5 times. What makes it different this time? She said it's now or never and opened the door. Luckily for us, it was the IDF, a special unit, like I said, called OCATS. I remember they tried to be as nice as possible. They smiled at us, they shook our hands, and they even gave us the time to go wring our shoes so we won't feel like we're in a rush for anything. And as soon as we left the house, I remember the first thing I remember from that day after I got out of the safe room was the smell. There was terrible smell of war, of smoke, with blood and sweat. A few days later, I realized it was the smoke of bodies getting rotted, but I did not know that people were murdered yet. And they removed us to another house with 2 more families. We were in a safe room with 7 children, the ages of between 3 to 8, actually 1 to 8. And it was me and 4 adults. And I remember the babies crying constantly, and some of them were covered with their own pee and vomit, some of them with blood too. They told me they had like ash on their clothes saying they set the house on fire. and they peed on themselves or on the blanket. They tied the blankets around their face and put them under the door as an attempt to prevent the smoke from coming in. And after about half an hour in that safe room, when the special unit surrounded the house, a few soldiers opened the door and said, "We gotta get out, prepare the kids, there are injured people in the house." We did not know what it meant. Then we got out of the room, we make our way to the entrance, and we go through the living room. That's when we paused. I look at the floor. It was covered with blood, and there were inner body parts scattered around the living room. I remember having a hard time realizing what I'm looking at, but as soon as I realized, my first instinct was covering my little brother's eyes. I think I should probably cover my little brother's eyes when there's an inappropriate scene on TV, but that wasn't the case. So I covered his eyes, we keep walking, then they shot out the house, the terrorists from outside. And it's like in the movies when you see the bullets hitting the wall right behind you and you hear them whistling next to your ear, just like that. So we ran back in and then outside again, and then surrounded by the unit, we started running towards the entrance, the exit of the kibbutz. And we ran wearing nothing but a pajama. For example, me, I had nothing on but these shoes, which is, by the way, impressive that I got to run for 2 kilometers with them. I had nothing on but these shoes, baggy shirt I used to sleep in, and shorts. And my phone, I was very lucky to have my phone. And that's how we all were. Kids with us were running with nothing but blankets. They had nothing on them but a blanket covering them, running. And while we were on our way, we looked around, and everything was on fire. The place we used to know, where we used to run, play hide and seek, go for picnics, everything was on fire. Houses of my friends, I remember seeing houses of my friends, remembering the text from before, remembering them saying, I'm in a room with the bodies of my parents and the house is on fire, somebody help me, and I'm seeing the house knowing they're still in there. And we had nothing to do but keep running. There were exploded cars by the side of the roads. There were trails of blood all over the sidewalks and bodies by the sides of them. I remember noticing the difference between a body of an Israeli soldier or civilian and the body of a Palestinian terrorist. The Israelis, you could tell by looking at them, they were tortured or killed by unimaginable, horrific ways. Every Israeli I've seen had their limbs or other body parts lopsided or missing, cut off. Some of them were burned. They were all covered with blood. And the terrorists, I remember not even realizing they were bodies because they're laying on the floor. I've seen some blood around them, but they honestly looked just like sleeping people. I couldn't even realize they were dead. And that's the difference, what I call it, between self-defense and murder. After we got out of the kibbutz, I remember going to the bus and seeing a lot of other people who survived standing on their way to go on the bus. I remember I did not cry until then, I was just shocked. And then an 8-year-old boy, a friend of my little brother, came to us, wearing nothing but his boxers and shirt, and had blood all over his face, and his glasses were missing. And he just told my brother, they killed my dad and sister and shot my mom. His sister was 10 months old. His father and sister were both shot inside the safe room. His mother was shot too, but she was taken to the hospital. And that's when we find ourselves with an 8-year-old boy and a 3-year-old boy, covered with their parents' blood, going on the bus. And that's honestly what broke me, realizing that actually happened and kids actually became orphans. We went on the bus, there were glasses everywhere on the seats and everywhere on the floor because they shot at the bus. So the windows exploded and we sat there and there were people who were shot in the bus. My brother, for example, threw up on our way to Tel Aviv. And he did not eat anything that day because we couldn't eat, we couldn't go to the bathroom, we didn't even brush our teeth, but he did see what I saw. And then we didn't even know we were going to Tel Aviv. They said Ashkelon, then Tel Aviv. They didn't know where to take us. They just took us out of there. Then they dropped us in Tel Aviv by the train station and went away. No one took care of where we were going to sleep tonight. No one said anything. They were in such a rush. They just wanted us to be in a safe place and leave. As soon as we were after Tel Aviv, there were still rocket sirens everywhere, and there were a bunch of soldiers waiting next to the train station. I remember they came to us, they hugged us, they saw all of us sobbing, crying, covered with their own, like I said, vomit, pee. And they offered us food that they got from other civilians. They gave us food, they gave us snacks. Two of them took me personally to wash my face and made sure I had a place to stay for the night. They actually interrogated me. They didn't believe me even when I said it, I have a place to stay. They thought I was just embarrassed to tell them I don't. And they were all so very kind. And then we arrived at my uncle's house in Tel Aviv, and we started hearing what happened. My uncle was rescued from his house. He told us he was on his way to the hospital after inhaling a lot of smoke. The house is gone. It was burned down completely, but he survived. He told us, don't call my ex-wife and the children. Their phones were broken. She's on her way to the Dead Sea with the two girls. Amit was kidnapped. That's what we heard at the time. Then I remember my grandfather called me and said, Ella. They didn't even know, by the way, they were shocked. I mean, they could feel it, but it was dark because the electricity was off. And my grandfather said, I went out to bring some bandages for her grandma. There's a terrorist sleeping on the sofa. And I remember calling the IDF and saying, send someone to this and that house. There are living terrorists in the house. My grandparents were shot in there, someone go. And my grandfather said, I'm okay. I got hit in the leg, they shot me in the leg, I'm okay. Your grandmother is bleeding massively. And my grandmother got hit by 2 bullets that got to her liver, and one of them would hurt her elbow and back. After 9 hours of bleeding in the safe room, she was taken to the hospital, to an urgent surgery, and survived. And 5 days after everything happened, we started getting announcements about the ones who died, the ones who were kidnapped. And I don't know if you know what a kibbutz is like, but it's a community. We used to live there, 1,200 people, now we're 1,100, and a few of them are still kidnapped. And everyone knows each other, everything, such a tight community, like a family. We live in a small area surrounded by a fence, and we all live together. We know each and every one, and each and every tiny detail that happens to anyone happens to us too. And we hear about it just the day after. We were such a tight community, and every loss of it was so painful and great to us. And 5 days after everything that happened, I remember hearing my mother crying in the bathroom. I remember going there, seeing the door was half open, walking in, looking at her, just asking who now, who is it now? And she looked at me without saying anything, and I alone realized it was about my dad. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I sat down because I felt like I couldn't stand anymore, and I stared at the wall, hoping maybe some other body who was, I don't know, burned or difficult to recognize, it was thrown in his house. I was just trying to tell myself a better scenario, but there wasn't. And I buried him one day after I was told. That's why I also couldn't give him any final words or goodbye, because I couldn't process anything yet. And I remember texting him that night, saying, where are you? Why aren't you answering? Are you in your house? Do you know what's going on? And not realizing why he wasn't answering. Until tomorrow came and we were at the funeral, and then I see the shape of the body wrapped with shrouds. That's when I realized, by the way, blood-stained shrouds. And that's when I realized why he didn't answer, because he was there. And just 5 hours before the attack, it was 1 a.m. when I was sitting with one of my friends in some nice place in the kibbutz, just talking about stupid things in our lives. And I said, I had a difficult relationship with my dad, and I remember telling her, I want to start calling him dad, you know. I can't call him by his name anymore, because I'm his only child, and he did earn the title of being a dad. And I don't feel comfortable with calling him by his name. I feel like it hurts him. And I don't know if I'm comfortable enough to call him dad, but he deserves it. He was 72. Said he deserves it. I mean, and I had no idea that 10 hours later he was about to be taken away. And I buried him, and honestly, I did not even see the Shiva. I I did not even sit Shiva. We just kept focusing on Amit because my cousin was still in Gaza. He celebrated his 16th birthday in captivity. And the last thing Amit knew before he was kidnapped was that his dad's house was on fire while his dad was still in there. And the last thing he saw was his mother and 2 sisters surrounded by 6 armed terrorists. I'm happy to say that 2 days ago Amit came back from captivity. We were all in euphoria. Amit was so shocked to find out his family is alive. And he did not even know what happened, and his innocence fascinated me because when we told him grandma was shot, he just asked why. He could not even realize, why did they shoot grandma? Why would they? And Amit is now in the hospital, and if it was up to me, I was there right now hugging him, not letting him breathe, because it's been 2 months and we had such a wonderful relationship. But I can't come back yet because there are 150 families between them, these wonderful families who still have their loved ones in Gaza, and they weren't released. Now, I can't imagine what I was going through before Amit was released. I remember the concern. I remember waking every morning, feeling like there's a rock on my chest, not knowing what's going on with him. And let's just make it clear that he wasn't kidnapped by some unknown man, and he wasn't just missing. These people were kidnapped by terrorists, which honestly I call them monsters, because I know what happened. Many people deny it. Many people say these things did not happen. I'm here telling you loud and clear. People were beheaded. People were burned alive. People's body parts were cut off. Women were raped. Children were kidnapped. All of that happened. And look at me listing it like it's nothing. All of it happened and people still question it. I have names of my friends who had to go through these terrible things. You know what? One example, my dad. My dad was burned. His house wasn't. I was in his house, there was blood on the walls and on the floor, but the house wasn't burned. The body was. I don't want to know what they did to him, and I'm holding on to the faith that he died from being shot. He did not suffer the unimaginable pain of being burned. And these things happen and people still question them. I posted my video, my story on social media. People said it's scripted, she's lying, no one cares about her tears, go cry to someone else. We can see a reading of your phone. We hope Amit will stay in Gaza. These are the comments I received. And in addition to all of them, there was Free Palestine. And I'm here just to say these things happen. My name is Elashani Cousin. I'm 14 and I'm standing behind what I'm saying. I'm giving you the facts. There's no propaganda here. I was there, I'm telling you. I'm not gonna say the names because these people were unfortunately no longer alive. They deserve to be remembered, and they deserve to be remembered for the horrible things they went through because they are the heroes who had to go through them. My friends died in such horrific and heroic ways. I have friends who died for their siblings, friends who took a bullet and were buried, but their little brothers are alive because they took the bullet for them. Now we're talking about these monsters here, these monsters who enjoy doing these things. And these are the ones who took Amit and everyone else. Now I told you a few stories here about the IDF soldiers, how nice they were to us. Friends of mine, I have a friend who was, for example, burned to the level there was nothing to bury but her toys. She was such a wonderful girl. She was murdered along with her twin brother, grandfather, and aunt. They made them stand in a line and shot them one after the other, Holocaust style. That's before they burned her, to the level that it took 6 weeks for archaeologists to announce her death. And people say it was an Israeli tank who killed her. Let's not even start with the fact that the IDF wasn't even in the kibbutz when she was murdered. We have an eyewitness who said all of it, she saw what happened to her, and people still blame the IDF, which is unbelievable. When we escaped the kibbutz, I remember IDF soldiers standing in front of me, and I was trying to make a step forward, and they came with me, knowing if there's gonna come a bullet, it's gonna hit them, and not me. When there was a rocket alarm in Tel Aviv, we were lying on the floor, and 6 IDF soldiers came around us and stood like this, like that, surrounding us in a circle, so that if a rocket hits anywhere, it's gonna hurt them, not us. That's who the IDF soldiers are. These are people fighting for their country, willing to die for their country, and they're now in the Gaza Strip, but they didn't walk in there to commit a massacre. They didn't walk in there to burn people alive. They didn't walk in there to rape women or humiliate them in front of the crowd. They walked in because they kidnapped our innocent civilians. And Israel values human life, and a proof to that is the Gilad Shalit deal when we released 1,027 prisoners who were sitting in the Israeli jails for attempting or succeeding to murder Israelis. For all of these, we released one soldier who didn't do anything. But we knew that he was someone's child. And Israel released him and risked the lives of hundreds of other Israelis. And we learned we had the consequences for that, because on October 7th, the ones we released then committed that massacre. But still, we can't say that it was worth it, but we wouldn't do anything differently, I can tell you that. That's how Israel values human life. And obviously we don't hide in our civilians' house and launch rockets from there. And you see the IDF soldiers, at first they attacked from the air, they bombed Gaza. I don't deny it, they bombed Gaza, but let's admit the fact that no IDF soldier enjoys seeing an innocent Palestinian die, ever. And that's why they didn't walk in there and bomb them themselves with their own hands. Because they didn't want to see it happen, but that's a war. We are in a war. And people told me that's not a war when one side doesn't have weapons. I think isn't it funny how Gaza ran out of everything but weapons? Every resource. They're crying, they don't have food, water, electricity, but they keep launching rockets on Israel. How is that? Let's ask ourselves. And I hope they would love their civilians more than they hated Israel. That's a sentence Golda Meir said. If they would love the Palestinians more than they hate the Israelis, there would be peace. And now that's what I'm giving you here. There are terrorist organizations running this country, and there are kids, children. The IDF soldiers are children. That's why I don't blame them for not rescuing us earlier that day. These are teenagers who are willing to sacrifice themselves for their country, and they deserve to be respected for that. They don't want to kill, they want to protect. And that's the difference. Now these families have their loved ones in Gaza, in captivity, with the monsters. I told you what they did. And they did this to, by the way, dead bodies. People who were beheaded and burned after they died. I hope that's what happened to my dad, that he was burned after he died. These families have these monsters in charge of their loved ones while they're still alive. Can you imagine how terrified we are? I'm not anymore because Amit is back, but still, as Israelis, we value each and every one's life. And I value these humans' life, and I value all these lives, and we want our families back home, and we have nothing more than our voice. We can talk. I'm spreading the message of telling you what happened to me, and giving you again the facts. The name is Arnold Schwarzenegger. I stand behind what I'm saying. These are the facts, and I'm giving it to you. That's my testimony. And I'm asking you to take it, and each and every one of you can do something with it. Keep raising awareness every day. Say at least one or two sentences about the hostages. These are our families. Imagine it being your son, your grandparent, your grandma, your grandpa, your parent, anyone from your family. These are our families who are there in captivity by monsters. Each and every second for us is torture, knowing they're still there. And we have nothing but our voice. We can't fight with nothing but our voice. So I think now we're doing whatever we can by coming until LA, which is crazy, by the way, if we have enough time to buy the tickets and come to LA while our loved ones are still in Gaza. But that's all we're doing here. Spreading the message, take it, spread the message even further, and do something with it, because all of you can influence and all of you can. I know you can. Thank you very much.
Two words from Bar and Yaakov.